Good morning. We start a little bit late because there was a very interesting debate in committee which ran over time. We are glad to welcome here Leonid VOLKOV, former chief of staff of Alexei Navalny and now a senior member of his team, and Mr. Ville Niinistö, who chairs the Parliament's delegation dealing with Russia. Welcome to both of you. So this morning, members of Parliament and leaders of the Russian democratic opposition in exile discussed how the EU can support Russian Democrats now that we have a war here in Europe, in Ukraine. So, Mr. Niinistö, what did you suggest this morning? And then afterwards, Mr. VOLKOV, did you hear any new interesting ideas? Mr. Niinistö.
Well, I think this was a timely discussion. I think we should have had this already when Mr. Kara-Murza and Mr. Yashin were freed from prison last autumn. So maybe we should have organized this earlier. But I think it was important that we organized it now, that all three of them, including Ms. Navalny, were here to tell us how they see the situation with pro-democratic forces within Russia, but also outside of Russia, how they can have an influence in the future of Russia. And for the European Parliament, we are a parliament that upholds the European values. So the fundamental rights of citizens, but also more broadly the UN Charter and the human rights globally, rule of law, and then also support to democratic forces and support to those who are persecuted by dictatorships. And that is the situation with the pro-democratic forces in Russia. We cannot, as Europe, just say that, we don't care about the future of Russia. We are just supporting Ukraine and being against Putin. We have to do that, but also we have to also support those Russians that want to have a more democratic future for Russia. So one of the discussions or outcomes of today's discussions was that we are looking at as the delegation of Parliament's relations to Russia, we are looking at a more permanent cooperation with the pro-democratic forces of Russia. So this was just a start to that dialogue, and also the policy recommendations they made in their speeches. We will discuss them with the Commission and with the Council of Ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Niinistö. Mr. VOLKOV, did you like what you heard? Was there something that impressed you?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a big privilege and honor. And I'm very happy with the fact that this discussion took place this morning, but also with the format of discussion and how it was arranged, because it was actually quite unique. From the European perspective, like Mrs. Navalny, Mr. Yashin, Mr. Kara-Murza, like well-esteemed leaders of Russian opposition. From the Russian perspective, though, it's quite a unique event because we have actually three leaders of three different opposition movements united, presenting their views and actually having so much in common. Because I believe that in all three interventions, we heard about support for political prisoners, of course, resistance to Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine and support for Ukraine, and the shared vision for free democratic European Russia, which is key for lasting peace and stability in Europe, and also key to defeating Putin. I can assure you, they didn't prepare, they didn't compare their remarks. They live in different countries, they belong to different branches of democratic movement, and still their remarks were very correlated, very coherent, and that's important. That's an important event for the Russian democratic opposition itself. And of course, the baseline where everyone agrees was also presented in a very clear way. That no one will liberate us from Putin. It's not going to happen. We'll not see Ukrainian tanks in Moscow. Thanks God, we'll also not see Russian tanks in Kiev. That's also excluded. So this war will not end when one army will defeat another. It's a war of attrition. It will end when one of the systems collapses. And our goal is to make sure that Putin will not able to carry on forever, being weakened by political tensions inside, by sanctions, by economic attrition, by all means of like diplomatic, political, military pressure played against him. Because of course, Putin is a like main threat to the security in European continent since Hitler, and he's very dangerous. He kills people, he poisons people, he runs hybrid aggression against all European countries. The way he has to be stopped by all means, but the leading role anyway will play like Russians inside Russians in the resistance. As Yulia pointed, they might be not visible now because of the fear of repression, but at some point of time they will rise, they will play a crucial role in transformation of Russia. And we have to start preparing now, we have to be in dialogue with them now. And the only political force that is able to lead dialogue with them are Russian democratic forces, quite obviously.
Thank you, Mr. Volkov. Mr. Niinistö, you and Mr. Volkov already answered a couple of questions I've been meaning to ask. I think you already explained why we should support restoration of democracy in Russia, that it's in Europe's own interest. And then if the reason why is clear, can the European Union do this? Do we have the resources, the possibilities? And Mr. Volkov already touched on this subject, but can this be done from the outside? Or is it a matter for people inside Russia only?
Well, obviously, democracy comes from the population. The people of Russia have a right to democracy, right to their own self-determination, also against the dictator in their own country. So we have to remember that Putin has never been elected as president of Russia in free elections. The OSCE has seen all of the elections during the time that Putin has been president more or less faulty. So they are not democratic elections. And that process has gone in the 25 years to a worse and worse direction. So there are no democratic structures left in Russia, you can say that. There are also some semi-democratic symbols, but it's a Putin-led authoritarian regime. And in those circumstances, we have to remember that in the last 30 years, there have been a lot of Russians who have been working in civil society, who have been in NGOs, who have been in different movements for the environment, for minorities, for just any kind of activism, like mothers of those who have been in wars, Putin's wars, have been active against wars in the past. And now Putin's regime is trying to repress all of these. If you make anti-war statements, you end up in prison. And these people have rights. And we as Europe cannot, from the outside say who should lead Russia. But what we can do and what we should do is support the right of all Russians to have their human rights respected, and that means that pro-democratic forces outside of Russia also should be supported, that these people within Russia get support also from the outside, that there is a Russian language media, that they can get free media information on what's happening in Russia as well, because within Russia everything is very much controlled by Putin. But it's up to people like Leonid and Mrs. Navalny, Mr. Kara-Murza and Mr. Yashin to create the movement. It's not our role, but what we can do is to support them and make sure that they have structures in Europe that support their work for democracy and the rights of all Russians.
Thank you, Mr. Niinistö. Mr. Volkov, you heard the comments of Mr. Niinistö. How obviously it is important to support both Russian Democrats who are in exile, but also change should also come from the people in Russia. And there the question comes, are you able to stay connected to civil society, to the concerns of ordinary people who remain in the country?
It's a very good question. Thank you so much. I have a metaphor that describes very well what we are doing now, which is we live a little bit in this, Alice in the Wonderland situation where the Black Queen says to Alice, girl, this is a place where you have to run very fast to stay where you are. And that's what we are doing. Running an opposition organization from exile is very complicated because when we operated from inside Russia, we were living the same life as our constituents. now we have to put a lot of effort actually to stay relevant, to stay informed, not to lose touch with the reality. We do a lot of polling, a lot of research, we collect a lot of feedback. That's actually a very important part of our political organization's work, to maintain, to continue like our research and to maintain our connections with our supporters in Russia. Social media, modern technology help us to achieve that goal. So we, for instance, we maintain a network of YouTube channels with a monthly audience of over 20 million unique viewers, 83% of them inside Russia. So right now, like as we talk, and this will be also broadcast through our network, we will reach like tens of millions of people inside Russia. So once again, we know they exist. They suffer under enormous repression. They cannot speak out because they know they will be thrown in prison. Putin has accumulated 700,000 troops on the ground in Ukraine, but Putin still have 1.4 million armed National Guard and riot police to keep population domestically under control. So all his like repression machine is like really working full steam. New political prisoners appear like every day, and still people speak out and protest. So we have to be their voice, and we have to help them to preserve themselves, to stay sane, to stay like stable, because it is very complicated to live in a world like surrounded by the propaganda when you have the feeling that everyone around you is like pro-Putin, pro-war, and so on. We know perfectly it's not true, like based on our polling, based on our research, but people inside this situation, under this propaganda pressure, cannot always preserve this feeling. So we help them, we find ways to help them understand they are not alone. Sometimes, like such a simple thing like a graffiti, like some sign put on the, like, on the wall somewhere, works as a strong antidepressant, because like I see this graffiti, I know that it means that someone like-minded lives next door to me, like in somewhere nearby. I don't know who he is or she is, I don't know what they do, but I know they are here. So this idea of like preservation, of like staying where we are, also demands for a lot of resources, but it's very important because, as I said, moment will come when these people, those people inside Russia, will rise and will speak their word.
I think this is very important for us also to understand in Europe, but we can't forget about these people. I mean, there are people who have been every day being repressed, and there are thousands of people who are political prisoners by the Putin regime. So it's in our duty also to make sure that their rights are being protected by supporting the democratic forces of Russia out in Europe, that their voice is being heard in Russia, they get support, but also by raising these issues in political negotiations. And I think in ending the war in Ukraine, it's very important that we as Europe, also Kaja Kallas and the representatives of Europe, raising those discussions, the future of Russians who have been jailed due to their anti-war activities. So it has to be also the freeing of political prisoners has to be part of the discussions also within Russia when there are talks about how to end the conflict. So Europe also needs to remember the rights of Russian citizens that are being pressed down by Putin regime.
If I may follow up on that, Mr. Niinistö, I heard in the discussion that the question of freeing political prisoners in Russia as part of a larger package of other agreements is stressed very much by all parties. And I see here that we have a question from the public, which I think is very good. And the person is asking, now that the US and Ukraine have started peace talks with Russia, what do you say to those who claim that Europe has no choice but also to engage directly with the Kremlin too?
I think that is false from the viewpoint of also listening to what Mr. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is saying, that they want the support of Europe and they can't be part of those discussions without also the support of Europe when it comes to economic support, but also arms support to Ukraine. Putin only believes or only respects strength. So there has to be strength at the table, and Europe has to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself and force Putin to come to negotiations with also giving up on his demands. Because if Putin's war policy wins in Ukraine, it's bad for Russians, it's bad for all these anti-war demonstrators in Russia, depression of civil rights will get just worse and worse in Russia if Putin's war policy continues. So we are supporting also those voices in that discussion. And I think it's important that we also raise this with the Ukrainians, that it's in the interest of Ukraine also to negotiate an outcome where political prisoners are freed more broadly in Russia. And Europe needs to be the voice of principles in these discussions. When the American government, the US government under President Trump is a bit more unreliable in its support to Ukraine, but also in its commitment to make sure that atrocities and war crimes perpetrated by Russia and by Putin are taken to courts, Europe has to be the one who reminds of these principles. So I don't think there is a need to change the position of Europe on this. Obviously, it's up to Zelensky in the end to discuss with Putin if there would be an outcome, not Europe to go in between and start to talk to Putin, because Putin would only use it against Ukraine and Europe. So we have to support Ukraine, and if Ukraine sees that they can get an outcome, we have to make sure that that outcome is something which also supports the civil rights of anti-war activists in Russia.
If I may follow up on this with a question to both of you, more general question, really, you went into more important details, but still, in general, Europeans support Ukraine, feel strong solidarity with it, and blame Russia for this war of aggression, for this terrible war.
We don't blame Russia. It's a fact that Putin started a war of aggression. That is, now there is going to be a Council of Europe process where also this war crime will be taken to the courts. And we support that process. We support international humanitarian law. We support the ICCC, and they have made a warrant on Putin. It's very clear that we are not against the population of Russia. We are against the illegal atrocities perpetrated by the Putin government and those working for him. Those war crimes must be punished.
Here.
Yes, still, I mean, there is a reticence here in the public opinion of this part of Europe to engage with anything Russian, and a feeling that. What do you say to those that claim that we should cancel anything related to Russia?
They help Putin a lot. Every time something like this is like pronounced loud from European political scene, Putin opens champagne. It's, by the way, champagne is of course sanctioned, but for them it's always a way to avoid sanctions and to import enough of it. And they celebrate because for them it's an important reassurance for one of their most important propaganda takes, that kind of they are all against us. That's an existential fight of Russia against the Western world. We are not part of Western civilization. We don't belong there. They all hate us. They all just want to destroy us and so on. And everything that contributes to this sentiment, everything that helps Russian propaganda to promote this idea is, of course, very good for Putin, makes him very happy. That's it.
I have to say, I come from Finland, and we have a long history with Russia. I mean, we were part of the Russian Empire for 100 years as well. St. Petersburg is very close to Finland. Obviously, we've had a lot of also conflicts in our past, so we are very skeptical about the Russian political system and the Putin regime, because we know how Putin thinks, and we have to be very strong against Putin. But having said that, we have also a lot of good history with Russian people. We have a lot of Russians also living within Europe, and they contribute to our societies. So I think this kind of like ethnic labeling that one nation is not capable of evolving into a democracy is totally false. In Europe also we've had dictatorship in European EU member states, and we created an EU after that to make sure that we are not warring against each other, that we uphold human rights between each other as well, and by trade, by committing to democracy and rule of law, we are all stronger. There are people in Russia who believe that Russia can be like that, and it's our job to make sure that those voices are being supported. So we have, a lot of friends in Russia, so we can't forget that Russians also have a right to evolve into a democracy, and Europe needs to support that.
Thank you. I want to take a question from a member of the public. They ask Mr. Volkov, but you could come in too. Do you think younger generations of Russians will help bring about change in your country? Is there a way to help them?
There was time when our generation was referred as a young generation. We were young and promising politicians like 10, 15 years ago. I got elected to the city council of my hometown, Yekaterinburg, which is Russia's fourth largest city, at the age of 28. And we had like a young generation of capable politicians which were threatening Putin, and then he actually started to destroy elections as a tool for them to get visible in the politics, because he realized it would be too dangerous. Like, I won my election, Ilya Yashin won his election, Alexei Navalny participated very successfully in the election for mayor of Moscow. Then he was banned from participating in any election. We attempted to register officially our political party 9 times. We 9 times were denied, 9 times won in Strasbourg in the European Court of Human Rights, and then denied again by Russian authorities. So Putin has put in obstacles like on the way of younger generations' participation in the politics. And now we are already not that young anymore, unfortunately, and we talk about like younger generations' involvement. Russia is a huge country, full of talented people, and many young, brilliant people are there. Now they know that they are not invited to participate in political life, because if you go to political life, you either have to be with the Putin's party, or you will be imprisoned or poisoned or killed or something. But when this obstacle disappears, we will see an influx of enormous political talent to this scene, and then many young politicians will come to prominence and will come to political life with different views, with different ideas. Our basic idea is to build democracy, to let them compete, to let Russian people choose what they want. I mean, I'm not sure that all of the young people in Russia share our views. That's not true, obviously. But there are some of them who are very capable, and I would be, for instance, very happy to invest my experience of organizing political campaigns to help them. To help them build their movements, help them run, help them get elected, and so on. We did it before 2021, before 2022, before the war, very successfully. Our candidates won municipal and regional elections in many cities across Russia just 4 years ago, before the war. And of course, we are not afraid of elections, of democracy, of political competition. It's Putin who is afraid. Exactly. And that's because he knows his standing, especially with young generations, is very bad.
I think this is good to remember from European side as well, that there is a reason why Putin wants to divide us in Europe, and why he wants to divide also the pro-democratic opposition of Russia, because he sees and feels, and the thing he's worried about is that if we in Europe are united, he will not have a chance to threaten us. If he separates us, then each country can start to think that, okay, maybe we will be mediating with Putin and we get along. But that's the wrong strategy from European side. And the same applies to the pro-democratic opposition within Russia. Putin is very afraid, if they can get a collective voice and if they can get more collective support, that he would actually be very weak and he would lose control of power. That's why his power has become more authoritarian year by year. And by supporting the pro-democratic forces, the Russians live in Europe, but also their chance to affect what's happening in Russia, and also raising the issue of political prisoners within Russia, I think we can still keep up the hope for those people, and that hope is something that Putin is very afraid of. So we need to keep up the hope, because that's what Putin wants to distinguish.
Thank you. You already answered partially, but a member of the public is asking that you, coming from Finland, from a country which knows Russia very well, as you mentioned, you were part of the Russian Empire at a certain moment. You have experienced how to deal with your big neighbor. What do you think from this experience is relevant for the whole of the EU?
Well, I think what we need to be is very clear. In Europe, we don't often listen to what is being spoken within Russia. I mean, Putin was very clear about his authoritarian tendencies already 25 years ago. He was saying a lot of things that we should have listened to, but we were just thinking that by trading with Putin, by doing Nord Stream, by buying gas from him, by appeasing him, we can control him. But by appeasing him, Will looked weak, and he got stronger in his war policy, in Chechen wars, in Syria, in Ukraine 2 times, and also in Georgia. So we have to realize also that what kind of a leader Putin is, that we have to be united against it, and it will not stop if we appease to that. But also we have to understand that there is another Russia under Putin, that we have to also give a chance for that civil society that has been there in the last since post-Soviet times. There was a generation who had hope for the future, and we have to make sure that they have a chance to create an alternative future for Russia. And I think, historically speaking, when we have been able to use the moments when Russia has been really keen on becoming more European, we need to open our arms to them at those moments. I think the historic moment was missed in 1991 to 1994, where Yeltsin really wanted to become European, even be part of NATO, and Europe was hesitant. We didn't know whether they are serious. If there are Russians who actually want to have serious relationship with us, let's be open to that. But when there are Russians like Putin, authoritarian regime, let's not be naive that appeasement is a solution to dictators. So we need to support the democratic people in Russia.
Thank you. We need to wrap up more or less. I wanted to ask you the following question. When Alexei Navalny died a year ago, that was a heavy blow for the Russian opposition, and Russia lost a remarkable leader. And Navalny often spoke about this beautiful Russia of the future, which is a vision of a free, prosperous, democratic, and also peaceful Russia internationally. Do you still hope to see that Russia in your lifetime?
Yes, of course. Optimism is a job requirement in our organization. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do what we are doing. But most importantly, that's the only way to make the enormous sacrifice he did to be not in vain. Like, to build this beautiful Russia of the future as a memorial for Alexei Navalny, so that we can come to his grave and say, Alexei, look, we achieved what you dreamed for, what you fought for, and what you gave your life for. It's kind of like the only way to make it all having sense, what happened to us in the last few years, what happened to him. And for me and for my colleagues in Navalny's team and the Anti-Corruption Foundation, it's probably one of the most important motivations now.
Mr. Niinistö, Mr. Volkov, thank you both for this conversation.
Thank you.